Disowned by my family at a young age, I never thought I would see them again. But fate has a way of bringing people back together. At a lavish wedding, I unexpectedly crossed paths with them once more. And the moment they saw me, their contempt was undeniable. My mother sneered, "Why is that useless girl here?" My sister smirked, "You weren't invited." But just as her husband was about to throw me out, he suddenly froze. His expression changed, his voice unsteady. "Wait, this woman is—" I simply smiled and said, "You really have no idea, do you? My name is Maya Ford, and I'm 30 years old. I live with my husband, Adam, who is 5 years my senior, and our 5-year-old son. Today, I'm attending a wedding with Adam. While the bride and groom are familiar acquaintances, it's Adam who has a stronger connection with them. I only recognize them by sight. The wedding is at a luxury hotel, and although I know it's improper, I can't help but wonder just how much all of this costs." Adam mentioned he was going to mingle with some people at the event, so I excused myself to use the restroom. As I was leaving the ladies' room to return to the ceremony, I overheard some unpleasant voices. "Well, look who it is, that defective piece of goods. What's she doing in a place like this?" "What do you mean, Mom?" "Goodness, you're right. Why is she even here? We didn't invite her." I could feel the sting of their words. They weren't even bothering to whisper anymore, they were throwing insults with such ease. Still, they hadn't addressed me directly, and I wanted nothing to do with people so blatantly rude. So I tried to hurry away. "Hey, don't walk away from me, you ugly thing. I know you can hear me." I wasn't sure if they had just called out to me, but I chose to ignore it. Ugly thing wasn't my name. As I walked quickly down the hallway, I heard footsteps following behind me, making me jump. This is ridiculous. They should have given up by now. Why keep embarrassing themselves like this? As I thought that, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. Apparently they had sprinted to catch up with me. Their nails dug sharply into my skin. "I told you to wait!" the woman snapped, out of breath. I looked her up and down before shaking off her hand. As I did, she stumbled dramatically, letting out a theatrical cry. Honestly, what a pointless show. "Elle, are you all right? How violent she is!" Another woman, who had been trailing behind, gasped as she came to support the first. Then, she shot me a furious look. "Excuse me, but what's going on here? Who do you think you are?" "Who am I? Are you really asking me that?" I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You seem like a self-absorbed, rude person. Have we met before?" Her perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up. "What's your problem? How dare you talk to me like that? If you've really forgotten, let me remind you. I'm your sister, Elle. Does that ring a bell now? Surely even your disappointing brain can recall that. And this," she said, gesturing to the woman beside her, "is our mother. Don't tell me you've forgotten your own mother, too?" Well, I suppose someone by that name might have been close to me once upon a time. I tilt my head. These people aren't worth engaging with seriously. My response seems to anger them both further. Just then, 2 men come running up. "Hey, what's all the commotion? We could hear the shouting from over there. Elle, are you finished with preparations? Oh wait, you're still in your regular clothes. You need to change quickly. Dad! Ron! This person! There's an intruder who's crashed our wedding. Please throw her out right now." Elle, as she calls herself, points at me while shouting. Didn't anyone teach her it's rude to point at people? The 2 men's reactions upon seeing me were complete opposites. The man called Dad widened his eyes, then scowled with obvious displeasure. The man called Ron froze with a shocked expression, the color draining from his face. Why is she here? I never thought I'd have to see her face on such a happy day. Right! She must have snuck in here by mistake. This is awful. Please call security right away. Hey, what are you saying? Watch your mouth. This person is Dr. Ford, Ron shouts with a pale face. Seeing this, I mutter quietly, "So, you really don't know anything, do you?" No one notices my muttered words. "Maya, so this is where you were. I was looking for you," says a new arrival, my husband Adam. Everyone's attention turns to him at once. Adam looks slightly taken aback. Sorry, I meant to come right back, but I got caught up with some strange people, I say with a wry smile as I move closer to him. Adam blinks and looks around at everyone present. Then he mutters, "Ah, it seems he's quickly grasped the situation. That's my Adam." Elle, who had been staring at Adam in admiration when he suddenly appeared, quickly switches back to glaring at me when I stand beside him. The two called father and mother still wore confused expressions, as if they haven't fully processed the situation. Ron, meanwhile, is clearly flustered. He's also the first to speak up. Doctor? Ford, I'm so sorry. It seems my wife has been very rude. And, my deepest apologies to your wife as well. Hey, Elle, you apologize too. What? Why should I apologize? She's the one who should be apologizing. This shameless person who snuck into our important wedding. I don't know how she found out about it, but this woman is our family's shame. We threw her out of the house long ago, and we were supposed to never see her face again. What family, you say? Adam seems surprised by this word and looks back and forth between Elle and me. The man and woman called father and mother quickly jump in to explain. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. You see, we have a good-for-nothing eldest daughter. She's such an embarrassment we couldn't even bring ourselves to mention her. Well, we threw her out of the house 9 years ago. Really? I wonder how she found out about Elle's wedding, showing up here like this. What could she be planning? She's not trying to ruin Elle's wedding, is she? That's right. She was a foolish daughter who couldn't even get into college, just a useless defect. She wasted her time with part-time jobs after graduation and lazed around the house, being nothing but a nuisance. She was quite the parasite. We should be thanked for taking care of her through high school. The insults keep coming. However, I had long since given up on this family and had learned to gracefully ignore all manner of verbal abuse. Yes, technically, these people are my family. That's what the family register says. However, my parents doted on my sister, who is 6 years younger than me, and I was completely neglected from the time I could remember. My father's family had been doctors for generations and ran a medical clinic. My mother worked there as a nurse. On the surface, we probably looked like a family that wanted for nothing, but in reality, it was a family poisoned by toxicity. When I was a child, I think there were times when I tried hard to be loved by my parents, but after hearing their incomprehensible reason that my sister is cute and you're not for always prioritizing my sister, I stopped expecting anything from my family. Fortunately, if I do say so myself, I was smart and liked studying, so I focused on studying hard to get out of the house as soon as possible. By that time, I think I was already playing the role of the failed older sister to my family. Listen here. We won't allow you to go to college. You're just a defective good-for-nothing anyway. There's no way you could get into college. You'll start working right after high school, and you'll give us money. You need to properly repay us for raising someone as unlovely as you. That's right. You've always lacked gratitude. College expenses? We might consider it for 1 lakh, but we won't spend another penny on you. You'll spend your life serving this household. Well, I doubt you could get a decent job anyway. My parents told me this in my 3rd year of high school. By the way, I recorded that conversation, and I've kept it until today. By the time I was in high school, I was recording almost every abusive word and unreasonable treatment from my family. Elle, my sister, completely looked down on me due to our parents' unchanging attitude and constantly tried to assert her superiority. I'm going to become a doctor and take over Dad's practice. I'll work hard for Big Sister's share too. Oh, how wonderful of you to say that. Yes, use her as an example of what not to be. Don't worry, Elle, you can do it. That's right, we'll support you all the way. Unlike your sister. Elle, you're truly our pride and joy. They would have these exchanges right in front of me, deliberately showing off. Yes, it was all just a charade. After graduating high school, I worked various part-time jobs as a freelancer for about 3 years. I did live at home during this time. Despite finding my presence annoying, they wouldn't let me leave the house on my own, probably because they wanted to keep me around to use as they pleased. But the truth was, I had secretly rented an apartment, They would say things like, "We won't forgive you if you do this," or "We won't forgive you if you don't do that." But I realized that once I became an adult, I no longer needed my family's forgiveness for anything. Of course, there were complexities finding a guarantor and other details to handle. Since I underreported my part-time income, I managed to keep the money they demanded for the household to a minimum. I also began investing and slowly built up my savings. Then, when my sister was preparing for her high school entrance exams, I was kicked out of the house under the convenient excuse that she can't concentrate on studying with you around. My parents had hoped to forgive me and let me return once things calmed down, but I seized the opportunity to leave for good. They must have been shocked that I, the one they thought couldn't survive on my own, didn't come back. But I'm sure they quickly lost interest. After all, my parents only needed my sister. It's been 9 years since then, hasn't it? As I lost myself in these memories, the argument between my sister and Ron, her fiancé, was escalating. Oh, right. Today's their wedding, these two are getting married. The invitation may have had my sister's name on it, but I didn't pay much attention. I thought it was just another person with the same name. That's how irrelevant this family had become to me. I'm telling you, why are you defending that woman? I've always said she's an intruder. Her presence here is ruining everything. Throw her out. And I've been telling you, I invited them to this wedding. You checked the invitation list with me, didn't you? They've already checked in at reception. They're proper guests. Now apologize for being so rude earlier. The two of them bickered, their voices rising. Is it really okay for them to be fighting like this before the ceremony? While I pondered this, my father suddenly looked in our direction and his face froze in realization. Could he be the son of Ford General Hospital? What? Ford General Hospital? That massive hospital? You mean the director's son? At these words, my mother's eyes widened in shock. A hospital director's son? All their attention, my parents, my sister, and her fiancé, focused on us at once. Adam gave a slight bow. How do you do? I'm Adam Ford. This is my wife, Maya. I also gave a gentle bow, offering a sweet, polite smile. Indeed, Adam's parents are both accomplished doctors who run a long-established, prestigious hospital. Adam is their heir, and he's a promising doctor who constantly hones his skills. My parents gaped, their mouths opening and closing like fish, watching me smile with poise and grace. My sister's husband quickly intervened, trying to regain control of the situation. Oh, what a coincidence that Dr. Ford's wife is my wife's sister. This makes us family, Doctor. Alan, thank you for seeing our son the other day. I cut off his words. This man, Alan Ron, who is becoming my sister's husband, is also a doctor. He works at a university hospital and recently examined our son who hasn't been feeling well lately. That's the extent of our relationship, although it seems Adam has had various professional interactions with him before. Apparently, Alan admires Adam. How is your son doing? Based on my examination, he needs immediate treatment. Please come to our hospital for initial testing and dash. Ah, well, we decided to get another opinion afterward. You know how important second opinions are, right? As I continue with a sweet smile, he freezes completely. It seems Alan sees my son as a VIP patient. That's why he's so desperate to treat him at his hospital. However, it's not pleasant to have a patient, especially my own son, viewed as a cash cow. I reject him with a smile. Then there's a derisive snort. What's this? Are you trying to get back at us just because you're a high school graduate? You think you're something special for catching a doctor husband? How stupid can you be? Just because you married the heir to a big hospital doesn't make you any more important. Your education level hasn't changed. Your thinking is so shallow and you even have a son. How pitiful for a child to have such a defective person as a mother. Hey, Elle, that's enough. This whole time, they're blood relatives, aren't they? Why do you keep saying such things? Alan hurriedly tries to stop her. However, Elle glares at him. She absolutely believes everything she says is right. Suddenly, Adam turns to me and asks, Maya, are these people really your family? No, they're not family at all. After all, family doesn't suddenly yell at you for unreasonable things, or withhold food for a day just for spilling a little on the table, or give me hand-me-downs from who knows where while giving my sister brand-name dresses and laughing at the comparison, or throw away my study materials saying, "You're stupid anyway, so you don't need these." They don't ruin textbooks by soaking them in water, right? So these people aren't family anymore. You're right. Family doesn't throw you outside barefoot in winter for not lending a book to your sister, or lock you in a storage shed in summer calling it discipline. They don't sell your belongings without permission, or say to your face that they'll work you like a slave for life. Even the neighbors noticed something was wrong with how the clinic treated the sisters differently, suspecting abuse, and stopped bringing their children to a clinic where parents would treat their child that way. I'm surprised nobody reported them for child abuse back then. Now their business is suffering because of it, but they haven't even realized why. It's really something else. During our matter-of-fact exchange, revealing the awful treatment I received in the past, Alan is staring wide-eyed and my parents are surprised too. Surprised that their daughter who left home long ago knew about their clinic's declining business. By the way, this information came from my in-laws' investigation. My in-laws are very sympathetic about the treatment I received and get even angrier about it than I do. They're kind people, and Adam is the same way. They had been investigating my parents' clinic thinking it might be useful someday for revenge, perhaps. "Hey, stop telling lies. We never did any of that. It's your fault for being a failure." "Ron, don't believe what this woman says," my sister shouts defiantly, but I think it's too late. Alan was looking at her with disgust. If only she hadn't chased after me when I tried to ignore her and leave, this wouldn't have happened. "No, you're the one who's been lying all along. What do you mean? You said Dr. Ford's wife only graduated high school. She's a college graduate who started a company and is its president, a medical food-related company that even our hospital relies on." "What? President?" My sister looks at me like she's seeing something unbelievable. My parents wore the same expression. "Don't you dare lie. You only graduated high school. What's this about college? Are you saying you went to college without telling us?" "Yes, I did. After all, I was an adult, and I had no reason to report anything to people who weren't really family anymore, right? How dare you speak to your parents that way? We told you we wouldn't allow you to go to college. And why exactly did I need your permission?" When I respond with exasperation, my parents grind their teeth. During my time as a part-time worker, after high school graduation, I had saved up a considerable amount of money. I used part of it for college expenses. There were still things I wanted to learn and things I wanted to do. Once I left home, I was completely free and could do anything. I met my current husband during college while I was starting my company. Thinking back on it makes me nostalgic again. Meanwhile, my sister was muttering something with a pale face. It's a lie. Because this one was a defective failure, a useless older sister who couldn't do anything on her own. I thought she must have died in a gutter somewhere after being thrown out of the house, but instead she even went to college, and now she's a company president, and she caught the heir to a big hospital. Why? I was supposed to be the one who would definitely be happier. Why? Why are you more successful than me? Why do you look so happy? I wonder why. Maybe because I kept working hard without becoming bitter even while receiving unreasonable treatment from my family. Well, I guess I was pretty lucky too. I said this while looking back at my sister. Then I dropped a bombshell. By the way, I heard you actually dropped out of middle school. Is that true? With those words, the atmosphere froze completely. The former family members and Alan all went rigid. What? What are you suddenly talking about? Who dropped out of middle school? My sister's nerve to talk back is impressive even now. Actually, I heard from our kind aunt who's always been good to me after I left home. You got complacent thinking you could easily get into any prestige school and didn't study at all. Then you showed up on exam day and turned in almost blank papers. Of course you failed. Then you threw tantrums at home and became a shut-in. You only started going out recently. That was after our parents introduced you to Dr. Allen as a suitable marriage partner, and only then did you finally break out of being a shut-in. As I speak, Alan's face grows increasingly stern. In contrast, my parents and sister lose more and more color. The aunt who told me this is a distant relative on my father's side. She's a gossip who somehow always knows everything and tells me about it. Though we'd only met 2 or 3 times when I was little, she always looked out for me and even became my guarantor. You stop spreading lies. My sister tries to object with a trembling voice, but I ignore her and continue. Also, you're supposedly working as a medical office clerk at the family clinic, but that's a lie too, isn't it? You don't actually have any qualifications and are just working as an odd jobs helper, right? They can't assign specialized work to someone without qualifications. I'm glad to see they retained at least that much ethical sense. Stop it. Those are all lies. Everything you're saying is a lie. Is that so? Well, I'm just telling you what I've heard. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. When I say this, my sister whirls around to face Alan. His expression is filled with suspicion, confusion, and disgust. Elle, you told me and our parents that you graduated from a famous women's university, then got your qualifications and were helping at the family clinic, right? Was it all lies? Academic fraud? This is fraud. You deceived me. That's not true, Ron. Don't believe what this woman says. Ron, you're my husband, right? Believe me. Then tell me the name of just one professor from the university you attended. When Alan presses her like this, my sister freezes. That's not relevant now. Oh no, then I'll call one of the professors from the department you claim to attend right now. They're acquaintances of my parents, they know me, their son, and we socialize as families. I'll ask if there was ever a student named Elle. Alan says this while reaching for smartphone. Stop it. There's no need for that. If you would just believe me, that should be enough. My sister lunges for Alan's phone, snatches it and slams it to the floor. Don't try to verify anything, just believe me. Then she grinds the phone further with her heel. Her expression is demonic. Alan is clearly put off, and my stunned parents hurriedly try to stop my sister. Other wedding guests and venue staff gather, drawn by the commotion. It turned into quite a spectacle. The truth is, it felt like someone else's problem, and that was because I no longer felt any connection to them. My family now consists solely of my husband and son. Well, shall we head home? We've given the wedding gift. We've fulfilled our social obligations, right? Are you sure you're finished, Maya? My husband asked with a subtle look, as if checking if I had said everything I wanted to, if I had gotten my revenge. I responded with a bright smile. I don't care anymore. Let's go home. Oh, how about we stop by the cake shop in this hotel on our way out? I've been dying to try their super luxury cake. Sure, let's do that. Let's buy some cake to take home. We laughed together and left the wedding venue. Sometime later, I heard that Alan had been sued for exaggerating diagnoses and charging excessive medical fees. Then, my parents came looking for my help, though. Of course, they didn't have my contact information. I heard they showed up at my husband's hospital, making a scene, demanding to see me. And my husband, listen here. You're the wife of this hospital's heir. She's our daughter. Let us see her right now. You can contact the heir through this hospital, can't you? We're in trouble here. She's family. She has to help us. We're just asking her to repay us for raising her. That's right. I never thought she'd be useful, but I guess raising her was worth it. Who would have thought she'd marry someone even better than Elle? Of course the son-in-law should help us. They were apparently causing quite a scene at the reception. But instead of me or my husband, it was my in-laws who came out to meet them. My in-laws, it seems, silenced my parents with a single glare and said, "What do you want with our daughter?" My parents froze, like frogs before a snake, and scrambled away. They tried to reach out again after that, but eventually, their neglect caught up with them and their clinic closed down quickly. When I heard about it, I felt nothing. Then, I found out that my sister and her husband had divorced. Honestly, I was surprised their marriage even lasted a few months. Perhaps Alan getting sued and fired from the hospital was the final straw. My sister began making misguided attempts to prove she could be happier than me. First, she got involved with a married doctor more than 20 years her senior, trying to catch a better husband than mine. However, the affair was quickly discovered, and a scandal erupted when the doctor's wife demanded compensation. My sister, apparently, turned to our parents for help, but they turned their backs on her, disowning her as a family disgrace. I have no idea what happened to her after that. I've heard various rumors that she started working in nightclubs, her health deteriorating, and that she became homeless. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. As for my parents, I heard they were desperately looking for work as doctors and nurses, but no hospital would hire a couple their age, nearing retirement. Of course, these were just rumors about my parents, probably the result of how they had treated me, which had spread throughout the medical community. But I had no time to waste thinking about people who weren't even family anymore. After getting a second opinion at another hospital, my son's health issues were resolved with medication, without needing hospitalization. I protect my family. Always have, always will. And just like that, the past was left behind. Now, it's time to reflect and learn from this story. Maya's story isn't just about revenge, it's about resilience, growth, and breaking free from toxic relationships. For years, her family tried to convince her that she was worthless, but in the end, they were the ones left behind. She didn't seek vengeance. She simply lived well, thrived, and that was the greatest victory. True success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. This story also serves as a powerful lesson in karma. Those who belittled her, mocked her, and discarded her ultimately faced their downfall due to their own arrogance. Her parents lost everything, her sister's lies were exposed, and those who once cast her aside were left with nothing but regret. But the most remarkable thing? Maya didn't have to lift a finger, she just kept moving forward, and the past crumbled on its own. What do you think? If you were in Maya's shoes, would you choose to forgive, or would you make them pay even more? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I stared at my reflection in the yacht's polished brass rail, barely recognizing the woman who gazed back. The Mediterranean breeze whipped my hair around my face while the setting sun painted everything in deceptive shades of gold. Including him. Another drink? His voice carried across the deck, smooth as aged whiskey. I shouldn't have been there. The spontaneous weekend getaway with my college friends had already stretched my carefully planned budget. But something in the air that evening made all my usual precautions seem ridiculous. Maybe it was the way the champagne bubbles danced in my blood, or how the gentle rock of the waves made everything feel dreamlike. My name is Hannah, and this is the moment I started losing myself. I'd love one. I turned to face Ryan Parker, watching as he navigated the deck with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned their place in the world. He handed me a fresh glass, his fingers brushing mine deliberately. You don't seem impressed by all this. He gestured at the luxury yacht, his family's wealth on display in every gleaming surface. Should I be? The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharper than intended. He laughed, and the sound sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. God, no. It's refreshing actually. Most women I meet here can't wait to tell me how amazing everything is. I'm an accountant, I said, swirling the champagne. I calculate value for a living. This? It's just numbers with a nice view. Just numbers? His eyebrow arched. That's cold. Realistic. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. He already had my hand, pulling me closer to where the yacht speakers spilled music across the deck. My friend Sophie caught my eye from across the deck, giving me an exaggerated thumbs up. I shot her a warning look, but couldn't help smiling. This wasn't me, the impulsive dancing, the flirting with strangers on expensive boats. I built spreadsheets and security nets. I planned. What are you thinking? Ryan's breath was warm against my ear. That this is probably a mistake. The best things usually are. His hand tightened at my waist. Tell me something real, Hannah. Something that isn't about numbers. I pulled back slightly, studying his face. I hate surprises. I color code my calendar. I haven't done anything truly spontaneous in years. Until tonight. Until tonight, I agreed. The music changed, but we kept swaying. Over his shoulder, I noticed an older woman watching us from the upper deck. Her expression was unreadable in the growing darkness, but something about her steady gaze made me uneasy. "That's my mother," Ryan said, following my look. "Margaret Parker. Don't worry about her, she watches everyone like that. Especially me. Charming. She's built an empire." Charm wasn't required. He spun me suddenly, making me laugh despite myself. "But we don't have to talk about her. Tell me more about this color-coded calendar of yours." "Why? Planning to disrupt it?" His smile turned predatory. "Absolutely. Later, I would remember this moment, the music, the lights of the coast twinkling in the distance, the way Ryan's eyes never left mine. I would remember it and wonder how I missed all the warning signs. How I didn't see that his charm was a carefully constructed weapon, that his mother's watchful gaze wasn't protective but calculating. That this whole evening was the beginning of something that would tear my carefully ordered world apart. But right then, with the Mediterranean night wrapping around us like silk, I just let myself fall. After all, the best things in life are mistakes, right? Wrong. So devastatingly wrong. The Parker Enterprises lobby gleamed with the same polished perfection as that yacht where I'd first met Ryan 6 months ago. Now, as his wife and newest employee, I clicked across the marble floor, my heels echoing like tiny gunshots in the vast space. "Mrs. Parker." The security guard's greeting still made me flinch. That name didn't feel like mine, even after the whirlwind wedding that had left my brother Mark shaking his head in disbelief. The elevator doors opened to reveal Margaret, imperious in charcoal gray, her lips pressed into their perpetual line of disapproval. "You're late. Traffic." I stepped in beside her, fighting the urge to check my appearance in the mirrored walls. "The board meeting isn't for another hour. In this family, early is on time is late." She didn't look at me as she spoke. Ryan should have explained that. Ryan explains what Ryan wants to explain. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Margaret's reflection smiled, sharp as a paper cut. "Perhaps you're not as naive as I thought." The elevator stopped at the executive floor, but Margaret held the door. "Join me for coffee." It wasn't a request. I followed her into her corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a god's-eye view of the city. She gestured to a chair while preparing 2 espressos with mechanical precision. "How are you finding married life?" She placed a cup before me, the china so delicate it seemed ready to shatter at a harsh word. "Different than expected." I wrapped my fingers around the warm porcelain. "But I'm adjusting." "Are you?" She settled across from me. "Because from where I sit, you look like a woman realizing she's bought counterfeit goods at full price." My cup clattered against its saucer. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't misunderstand. Ryan can be charming when he wants something. But charm fades, doesn't it? Especially when the pressure starts." She leaned forward. "Tell me, has he started asking about children yet?" The question hit like a slap. Last night's argument about starting a family echoed in my head, Ryan's insistence that we needed an heir. My request for more time to establish myself at the company. "I see he has." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Did you know his first wife miscarried twice before they divorced?" The espresso turned bitter in my mouth. "First wife? He didn't mention Charlotte? How convenient for him." She checked her watch. "The board's waiting. We'll continue this discussion later." I sat frozen as she gathered her things, my mind racing. Through the glass walls, I watched employees scurrying past, their faces carefully blank. A flash of movement caught my eye, Ryan, emerging from his office with a stunning blonde I'd never seen before. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm with familiar ease. "That's Jenna Collins." Margaret's voice carried a note of warning. New hire in accounting. Quite ambitious, from what I hear. I stood, smoothing my skirt with trembling hands. Why are you telling me all this? Because, my dear, in this family, information is currency. She paused at the door. And I prefer to know where my investments stand. The board meeting passed in a blur. I presented my financial projections while watching Ryan and Jenna exchange glances across the table. When voices rose near the end, I caught fragments of a heated discussion by the water cooler. Can't keep this quiet forever. She doesn't suspect. Just like Charlotte. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark, free for lunch? Need to talk. I typed back quickly, yes. Please. Walking back to my office, I passed Ryan's door just as Jenna emerged, adjusting her blouse. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, a small smile playing at her lips. Inside my office, I opened my laptop and began a new spreadsheet. But instead of numbers, I started listing names, dates, and overheard conversations. If Margaret was right about information being currency, it was time I started banking some of my own. The familiar comfort of organizing data calmed my racing thoughts. After all, I was good with patterns, good at spotting irregularities. And something in this perfect corporate facade was definitely irregular. Ryan's first wife. Jenna Collins. Margaret's warnings. All pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I needed to solve. Until now. The annual Parker family dinner felt like a performance where everyone knew their lines except me. I watched Ryan charm the room while Jenna, somehow invited as key staff, hovered at the edges like a shark scenting blood. More wine? Margaret's voice carried an edge as she refilled my glass. We stood in her mansion's formal dining room, surrounded by oil paintings of stern-faced Parkers who seemed to judge my every move. The quarterly numbers exceeded expectations, Ryan announced to the assembled board members and family shareholders. Thanks in no small part to our new talent acquisition. His eyes flickered to Jenna, who preened. I gripped my wine glass tighter. Interesting. Since those reports haven't crossed my desk yet. The room stilled. Ryan's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. Darling, you've been so busy with the Miller account. Which wrapped last week. I took a deliberate sip of wine. Funny how these things keep bypassing the head of financial oversight. Jenna stepped forward, all practiced concern. Oh, I left those reports on your desk yesterday. Perhaps they got misplaced? Nothing gets misplaced in my office. I met her gaze steadily. Just like nothing gets misplaced in the company accounts. Speaking of which, has anyone reviewed the recent wire transfers to our Cayman subsidiary? Ryan's fork clattered against his plate. Margaret, who'd been watching the exchange like a tennis match, suddenly smiled. An excellent point, Hannah. Perhaps we should discuss those transfers now. This isn't the time, Ryan started. It's exactly the time, Margaret cut in. Jenna, dear, since you've been handling those transactions, why don't you enlighten us? Jenna's composure cracked for just a moment. I need to consult my files. I have them here. I pulled out my phone, watching her face pale. Interesting pattern of movements. Almost like someone's building a nest egg. Or planning an escape route. Ryan, Jenna's voice turned plaintive. Tell them about our plans. Plans? Margaret's eyebrow arched dangerously. Ryan stood abruptly. Mother, Hannah, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation. Sit down, Ryan. Margaret's command cracked like a whip. Hannah, continue. I projected the spreadsheet onto the dining room wall using my phone. 3 months of systematic fund diversions. Small enough to slip notice, unless you know where to look. I always know where to look. You bitch, Jenna hissed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I advanced to the next slide. Just like I know about Charlotte. Ryan's face went ash white. Around the table, several board members shifted uncomfortably. "Who's Charlotte?" Jenna demanded. "Ryan's first wife," Margaret supplied, almost cheerfully. "The one who discovered his previous indiscretions before her unfortunate accident." The room erupted in whispers. Jenna's eyes darted between Ryan and the door. "There was no accident," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "But there was a very interesting insurance payout. One that's still paying dividends through a series of shell companies. Companies that, until recently, were receiving those Cayman transfers." Ryan lunged for my phone, but Margaret's hand shot out, catching his wrist. "Enough, Ryan. You've embarrassed this family for the last time." "You don't understand," he snarled. "I built this company." "You built nothing," Margaret snapped. "You inherited everything and squandered it on schemes and women who saw you coming a mile away. Hannah, continue with your findings." But Jenna had heard enough. She bolted for the door, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. Ryan moved to follow, but 2 board members blocked his path. "The police have already been notified," I said quietly. "About both the fraud and Charlotte's case being reopened." Ryan's face contorted. "You were supposed to be different. Easy. Controllable. That was your first mistake." I turned to the board. "I've prepared a complete audit. You'll find everything you need to know about the systematic fraud and where the money really went, including who helped cover it up." As security arrived to escort Ryan out, Margaret touched my arm. "Well played. Though I suspect this isn't over." "No," I agreed, watching my husband being led away. "But then, that's exactly what I'm counting on." Through the window, I saw Jenna being stopped at the gates. Everything was falling into place, just like in my spreadsheets. But unlike numbers, revenge had a taste, bitter, bright, and surprisingly satisfying. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Ryan's face as he sat across the interview room table. 3 days after the dinner party revelation, and he still wore his arrogance like expensive cologne. "Drop the charges," he said, his voice low and controlled. "We can still fix this." I leafed through the manila folder before me, letting the silence stretch. "Like you fixed things with Charlotte?" "You don't know anything about Charlotte." "I know enough." I slid a photograph across the table, Charlotte's car wrapped around a tree. The brake lines didn't fail by accident. His jaw tightened. "Accusations without proof are worthless." "I know." I pulled out another document. "That's why I had these forensic reports redone." The door opened, and Mark stepped in. My brother's presence had always steadied me, but today he radiated barely contained fury. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." He emphasized the last word, staring at Ryan. "This is a private conversation," Ryan snapped. "Not anymore." Mark sat beside me. "See, when my sister started digging into your past, I did some digging of my own. Found some interesting people. Charlotte's brother, for instance." Ryan's composure cracked. "You contacted James?" "He's very interested in reopening the investigation." I watched Ryan's hands begin to shake. "Especially after learning about the insurance policy you took out 2 weeks before the accident." "You stupid bitch." Ryan lunged forward, but Mark was faster, shoving him back into his chair. "That's assault on camera," Mark said quietly. "Want to try for more charges?" My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret, "Jenna talking. Everything. Come now. We're done here." I stood, gathering my files. "Your lawyer can contact mine about the divorce proceedings. You think you can just walk away?" Ryan's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "You're nothing without me. A glorified accountant who got lucky." "Lucky?" I turned back. "I'm the one who found the pattern in your wire transfers. I'm the one who traced Charlotte's accident back to you. And I'm the one who's going to watch everything you built crumble while you sit in a cell wondering how you underestimated me so badly. His face contorted. Margaret put you up to this. She never wanted. Margaret didn't have to put me up to anything. You did that yourself, every time you thought I was too stupid to notice, too weak to fight back. I moved to the door. Goodbye, Ryan. In the hallway, Mark caught my arm. You okay? No. My hands were shaking now. But I will be. There's something else. He glanced around before lowering his voice. The detective found more cases. 2 other women before Charlotte. Different names, same pattern. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. How many? They're still investigating. But Hannah, this goes deeper than we thought. Margaret knew. She had to have known. My phone buzzed again. Hurry. Things changing fast. I have to go. I straightened my spine. Margaret's waiting. Be careful. Mark's concern was palpable. She's not your ally just because she's Ryan's enemy. I nodded, already moving toward the exit. In my car, I pulled out my own file, the one I hadn't shown Ryan. Bank statements, property deeds, and a series of emails that painted a very different picture of Margaret's role in all of this. The Parker empire wasn't just built on ambition and business acumen. It was built on secrets, on carefully orchestrated accidents and convenient disappearances. Ryan wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. My phone lit up one more time. Don't trust anyone. Jenna. The wild card I hadn't counted on. Was she really turning on Ryan, or was this another layer of manipulation? I started the car, watching Ryan being led to a holding cell through the station window. He looked small suddenly, diminished. But Margaret was waiting, and with her, answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. The game was changing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about survival. And I had a feeling I'd just scratched the surface of how deep this rabbit hole went. Margaret's office felt like a trap, all gleaming surfaces and sharp edges. Jenna sat in one of the leather chairs, her usual polish cracked, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. The sight should have satisfied me. Instead, it made my skin crawl. Show her, Margaret commanded. Jenna's hands trembled as she pushed a USB drive across the desk. It's all there. Everything Ryan made me do. Everything he made the others do before me. I picked up the drive, turning it over. Why now? Because I found out what happened to Sarah. Jenna's voice cracked. The girl before Charlotte. She wasn't just another mistress who disappeared. She was pregnant. Margaret's face remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened around her crystal tumbler. Ryan always was careless with loose ends. Loose ends? The words tasted like acid. Is that what we're calling murdered women now? We're calling them necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Margaret stood, moving to the wall of family photos. This company employs thousands. Supports entire communities. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made. Did Sarah's family consider her death a difficult decision? I watched Margaret's reflection in the window. Or Charlotte's? How many others were there? You're missing the point, dear. Margaret turned, her smile razor sharp. The question isn't how many. It's what happens next. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another message from Mark. Got the files. It goes higher. Get out. I should take this to the police, I said, gripping the USB drive. Like you took the evidence about Ryan? Jenna laughed bitterly. Check the drive. The police captain's on the payroll. Has been for years. Margaret poured another drink. You're in quite the position, Hannah. You could try to expose everything, watch this company crumble, destroy thousands of lives. Or you could take your rightful place. Ryan proved himself weak, but you have potential. Real potential. She gestured to the CEO chair. This could all be yours. The room suddenly felt airless. You knew about all of it. The women, the murders. I protected my family's legacy. Margaret's voice hardened. Just like my mother did before me, and hers before that. Do you think empires are built on kindness? My phone buzzed again. Police chief found dead. Apparent suicide. Move now. Tick-tock, dear. Margaret smiled. The board meets in an hour. They'll need to know who's really in charge now that Ryan's indisposed. Jenna stood abruptly. I've told you everything. I want out. Of course. Margaret nodded to someone behind me. I turned to see the security chief enter, his face expressionless. Jenna's eyes widened in recognition, or terror. No, she whispered. You promised. I promised you'd be taken care of. Margaret waved her hand dismissively. And you will be. The security chief moved toward Jenna. I stepped between them, my heart hammering. Stop. Choose carefully, Hannah. Margaret's voice carried a deadly warning. Power or principles? You can't have both. My phone buzzed one final time. Mom's old files decoded. Margaret killed her too. The pieces clicked into place. My mother's mysterious accident 15 years ago. Right after she'd started investigating Parker Enterprises' finances. Actually, I pulled out my phone, showing the recording app's running timer. I can have justice. Margaret's mask slipped for just a moment. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I grabbed Jenna's arm. We're leaving. And if anything happens to either of us, everything goes public. Every detail. Every death. Every cover-up. You'll regret this, Margaret called as we backed toward the door. You have no idea what you're giving up. But I did. I was giving up power built on blood, an empire founded on bodies. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt clean. In the elevator, Jenna sagged against me. Where are we going? To meet my brother. I clutched my phone like a lifeline. And then we're going to burn it all down. The elevator descended, carrying us away from Margaret's web of lies. But I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The safe house Mark arranged felt more like a prison. 3 days since fleeing Margaret's office, and the walls kept closing in. Jenna paced by the window, jumping at every shadow, while I stared at my laptop screen until the numbers blurred. They found Sarah's body. Mark's voice cut through the silence as he entered, tossing a file onto the table. Construction site, just like Mom's case. The laptop clicked shut. How many others? 7 confirmed so far. Different states, different names. Same method. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The FBI contact I reached out to. Found dead in his apartment this morning. Jenna stopped pacing. They're cleaning house. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, missing you at the office. The board asks about their new CEO. Another message followed, check the news. The TV flickered to life, showing Ryan at a press conference, Margaret at his side. His face showed genuine remorse as he spoke. My wife's tragic breakdown has shocked us all. Her paranoid accusations and theft of company documents. Theft. I stood so quickly my chair toppled. They're framing me? Smart play, Jenna muttered. Discredit the whistleblower before she can blow the whistle. Mark switched channels. The story was everywhere. My photo, my history, carefully edited to paint the picture of an unstable woman driven mad by ambition and jealousy. Your psychiatric records have been altered, Mark said quietly. They're painting you as delusional, obsessed with conspiracy theories. The evidence we gathered? They'll say you fabricated it during a mental break. My phone buzzed again. The board votes tomorrow. Last chance to come home, dear. We need to release everything now, I said, reaching for the USB drive. They've thought of that too. Mark pointed to the screen where a financial expert discussed the potential economic devastation if Parker Enterprises collapsed. They've tied the company's fate to 3 major pension funds. You expose them, you bankrupt 500,000 retirees. Clever witch, Jenna whispered. She's made it impossible for you to be the hero. A sharp knock at the door made us freeze. Mark drew his gun, moving silently to the peephole. His shoulders relaxed slightly. It's Charlotte's brother. James entered, looking nothing like his photo. His face was gaunt, haunted. They're moving faster than we thought. The evidence you gathered? There's a fail-safe. If anything goes public, dozens of sealed documents get released, implicating innocent people in financial crimes. Margaret's insurance policy, I realized. She's been building it for years. Everyone's either complicit or compromised. Or dead, James added grimly. Like Sarah. Like Charlotte. Like your mother. My phone lit up one final time. The car crash wasn't quick, you know. Your mother had time to regret her choices. Don't make her mistakes. The room spun. I gripped the table edge, feeling the walls of Margaret's trap closing in. Release the truth, destroy countless lives. Stay quiet, let the murders continue. Fight back, watch more innocent people die. There's another way. Jenna's voice was steady for the first time in days. But you won't like it. What way? We give Margaret exactly what she wants. Jenna's eyes gleamed. You take the CEO position. That's suicide, Mark protested. No, it's perfect. Jenna stepped forward. You become what she wants, the perfect successor. The worthy heir. And then we destroy it from the inside, I finished, understanding dawning. Not with exposure, but with careful, systematic dismantling. It could take years, James warned. Then it takes years. I picked up my phone, staring at Margaret's last message. She taught me well, patience, precision, playing the long game. Time to use those lessons against her. I typed my response, coming home, mother. See you at the board meeting. The die was cast. To save others, I would have to become what I hated most. To destroy Margaret's empire, I would have to join it. Mark touched my shoulder. You don't have to do this. But I did. Because sometimes the only way to slay a monster is to become one yourself. At least for a while. The Parker Enterprises boardroom felt like a courtroom, with 20 pairs of eyes watching my every move. Margaret sat at the head of the table, resplendent in crimson, while Ryan slouched in his chair, defeat written across his features. The board recognizes Hannah Parker, Margaret announced, her voice carrying a note of triumph. Who has graciously agreed to resume her duties despite her recent difficulties. I stood, smoothing my black dress. Thank you, Margaret. But before we proceed, there's something the board should see. We've already addressed the unfortunate rumors, Margaret started. Not rumors. I pressed a button on my phone. The boardroom screens flickered to life, showing security footage from the construction site where they'd found Sarah's body. Facts. Ryan straightened. What are you doing? Showing everyone exactly what kind of company they're running. I advanced the footage. Watch carefully. You'll recognize the car. Margaret's hand tightened around her pen as her own vehicle appeared on screen, the timestamp matching the night of Sarah's disappearance. Turn it off, she commanded. Can't do that. I moved to the center of the room. Just like you couldn't stop the automated emails that just went out to every major news outlet, containing 40 years of buried evidence. Charlotte's murder. My mother's accident. Every single cover-up. You'll destroy everything, Ryan sputtered. The pensions are safe. I smiled. While you were busy framing me, I was transferring them to a secure trust. The only thing that's going to collapse is the house of cards you built on dead women's bones. Margaret stood slowly, her composure cracking. You ungrateful little. Careful, mother. I emphasized the word. The recording's still running. And the FBI agents in the lobby are very interested in every word. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Directors scrambled for their phones, watching their carefully constructed world implode in real time. You don't understand what you've done, Margaret hissed. The power you're throwing away. I understand perfectly. I met her gaze. You offered me an empire built on blood. I'm choosing justice instead. Ryan lunged for the door but found Mark waiting there, badge displayed. Ryan Parker, you're under arrest for the murder of Charlotte Bennett. You can't prove anything, Ryan sneered. Actually, Jenna stepped in from the hallway, I can. I kept receipts, Ryan. All of them. Margaret's laugh cut through the chaos. You think this ends here? I've survived worse. In a week, this will all be buried. No, Margaret. I placed a final document on the table. It won't. Because while you were teaching me to play the long game, I learned something you never did, the power of a paper trail. She snatched up the document, face draining of color as she read. These signatures. These accounts. Every murder. Every cover-up. All traced back to your personal orders. I leaned close. I'm my mother's daughter after all. And she taught me to always keep perfect records. The FBI flooded the room. As they led Margaret away, she turned back. I made you. No, I replied. You tried to break me. There's a difference. Hours later, I stood in my mother's old office, now mine, watching the news coverage of the Parker family's spectacular fall. Mark appeared in the doorway. You okay? Not yet. I touched the photo of our mother on the desk. But I will be. The trust fund's secure, the employees are protected, and the truth is finally out. And Margaret? We'll have plenty of time to reflect on her choices. I turned from the window. From a cell next to Ryan's. What about you? He studied my face. Running this company, even cleaned up, is a big responsibility. I smiled, thinking of all the lives touched by Parker Enterprises, all the good it could do under honest leadership. Someone once told me that power doesn't have to corrupt. It's time to prove that. The sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of justice long delayed but finally served. In my pocket, I carried my mother's old ledger, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. The prison visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and desperation. Ryan sat across from me, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, his famous charm dimmed to a flicker. Come to gloat? His voice rasped. No. I placed the divorce papers between us. Come to end it properly. He stared at the documents, then at my face. You could have had everything. The company, the power. I have everything I need. I pushed a pen toward him. The company's being restructured. Employee-owned now. Sarah's family is on the board. Saint Hannah. His laugh held no humor. Still trying to fix the world? Just the parts one can reach. I watched him sign, each stroke of the pen severing another tie. Margaret asked about you. His hand trembled slightly. And? I told her the truth. That her perfect son turned out just like her, willing to sacrifice anyone for power. I collected the papers. She cried. First real emotion I've seen from her. You've destroyed my family's legacy. No, Ryan. You did that. I stood. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Wait. He pressed his palm against the glass. What if I could give you something? Information about other companies, other families like ours? The old Ryan emerged for a moment, calculating, manipulative, always looking for an angle. I thought of Margaret in her cell, probably making similar deals. Keep it. I turned away. I'm done with revenge. Outside, Mark waited by the car. All done? Almost. I handed him a file. One last thing. The cemetery was quiet, morning dew still clinging to the grass. My mother's headstone had been replaced with a new one, the true date and cause of death finally carved in stone. She'd be proud, Mark said softly. She'd be furious I took so long. I placed a single rose and her restored accounting ledger against the granite. But I think she'd understand. My phone buzzed. Jenna, from her witness protection location, board approved the whistleblower protection program. Charlotte's brother says thank you. Another message followed from James. Sarah's scholarship foundation launches next week. You'll speak? The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, different from the burden of revenge. Lighter somehow. Cleaner. Ready? Mark asked. 1 second. I traced our mother's name. You know what's funny? Margaret thought she was teaching me to be ruthless. Instead, she taught me the price of ruthlessness. And what are you going to teach others? I smiled, thinking of the company's new direction, the foundations being built, the safeguards being put in place. That power doesn't have to corrupt. That justice doesn't always mean destruction. That sometimes the best revenge is making sure it never happens again. Walking back to the car, I passed rows of graves, each marking a life, a story, a choice. Somewhere in the state penitentiary, Margaret was probably still plotting, Ryan still scheming. But their power was gone, transformed into something else entirely. My phone buzzed one final time, an unknown number. The message was brief: you've made powerful enemies. Watch your back. See. Another Charlotte? Or someone else entirely? The old me would have obsessed over it, started another investigation, sought more revenge. Instead, I deleted the message. Let them come. I wasn't afraid anymore. The Parker legacy of secrets and murder had ended with me, replaced by something stronger than fear or power or revenge. Truth. Mark started the car. Where to? Forward, I said simply, leaving the graveyard and its ghosts behind. The morning sun caught my mother's wedding ring, now on my right hand, not as a reminder of marriage, but as a promise to myself. Some people spend their lives seeking power. Others spend their lives fighting it. But there's a third path, using power to protect, to heal, to change. That was my legacy now. And unlike the Parkers, I intended to build it without burying anyone along the way. The car pulled away, carrying me toward whatever came next. I was ready. After all, the best stories don't end. They transform.
Perfume lingers. It always does. Even when you think you've washed it away, traces cling to fabric like guilty fingerprints. The scent on Mark's collar wasn't mine, a sickly sweet jasmine that made my stomach turn. I held the shirt closer, inhaling deeply, making absolutely certain. No mistake. This wasn't my signature vanilla and amber. I'm Jane, and until this moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was: successful businesswoman, devoted wife. Daughter of David Mitchell, who built Mitchell Trading from nothing. Funny how one small detail can shatter everything you believe about your life. Honey, have you seen my blue tie? Mark called from upstairs. The one with the diagonal stripes. My fingers tightened around the shirt. Check the back of the closet door, I answered, keeping my voice steady. You wore it last week to the Henderson meeting. Got it. His footsteps echoed above, followed by the sound of drawers opening and closing. I carefully placed the shirt back in the laundry basket, arranging it exactly as I'd found it. My hands were trembling. The rational part of my brain tried to construct innocent explanations, a colleague's perfume from a casual hug, perhaps. But my gut knew better. After 12 years of marriage, you develop a sixth sense about these things. Mark appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie. How do I look? I turned to face him, studying the man I'd pledged my life to. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile confident and warm. He looked exactly like the man I married, and somehow like a complete stranger. Very handsome, I said, forcing a smile. Important meeting today. Just the usual client lunch. Probably won't be back until late. He grabbed his briefcase from the counter. Don't wait up if you're tired. As he leaned in to kiss my cheek, I caught another whiff of that jasmine scent, so faint it was almost imperceptible. My stomach clenched. Have a good day, I managed. The moment the front door closed, I pulled out my phone and called the office. Sandra, it's Jane. I'm not feeling well, might take a personal day. Of course, Mrs. Mitchell. Should I reschedule your afternoon appointments? Please. And Sandra? If my father asks, tell him I'll catch up on everything tomorrow. I ended the call and sank into a kitchen chair, my mind racing. The perfume was just the latest piece of a puzzle I'd been subconsciously assembling for weeks. The late meetings. The guarded phone calls. The way he'd grown distant, distracted. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, lunch today. Need to talk about something. Rachel, my best friend since high school. The one person I could always count on. I started to type a response, then stopped. Something about her message felt off. Rachel never needed to talk, she just talked. I opened our text history, scrolling through recent conversations. The patterns jumped out at me now, her sudden cancellations, vague explanations, decreased enthusiasm in our usual banter. How had I missed it? My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I considered my response. Every instinct screamed that I was standing on the edge of something devastating. But if I wanted answers, I needed to play this carefully. Sorry, not feeling great today. Rain check. I typed, then added a sick emoji for good measure. Her response came quickly, no problem. Feel better. Red heart. Too quickly. Too cheerful. The heart emoji felt like a slap. I set my phone down and walked to the window, watching Mark's car disappear around the corner. The morning sun cast long shadows across our perfectly manicured lawn, highlighting the life we'd built together. Or rather, the life I thought we'd built. One thing was certain, I needed proof. And once I had it, someone would pay. 3 days after finding that perfume, I sat at my father's mahogany dining table, watching my husband laugh at something Rachel had just whispered. The sound grated against my nerves like steel on glass. More wine, Jane. My father held up a bottle of his prized Bordeaux. Please. I pushed my glass forward, noting how Rachel's eyes followed the movement. She'd been watching me all evening, her usual warmth replaced by something calculating. Lori bounced little Eli on her knee at the other end of the table. Mark, you haven't told Jane about the promotion yet, have you? My hand froze mid-reach for my wine glass. What promotion? Mark's laugh died abruptly. He shot his sister a look that could have frozen hell. I was waiting for the right moment. It's not final yet. Oh. Rachel's voice carried a note of false surprise. I thought you said it was a done deal last week when she stopped herself, taking a large sip of wine. The room grew painfully quiet. I could hear the tick of my father's antique clock, marking each second of this exquisite torture. When you what, Rachel? I kept my tone light, casual. The perfect concerned friend. When we ran into each other at Starbucks, she finished smoothly. Just a quick hello between meetings. My father cleared his throat. Speaking of business, Mark, those quarterly reports need reviewing before Monday. Perhaps you could come in early. Actually, Mark shifted in his chair. I have a breakfast meeting with clients. Cancel it, my father said flatly. The steel in his voice made everyone look up. David Mitchell didn't suggest things, he commanded them. I watched Mark's jaw tighten. Of course, sir. Lori stood suddenly, Eli squirming in her arms. Someone needs a diaper change. Jane, would you mind showing me where? Use the guest bathroom upstairs, I said, not taking my eyes off Mark and Rachel. Second door on the right. The moment Lori left, Rachel pushed back her chair. I should probably head out. Early morning tomorrow. But you haven't had dessert, I protested. I made your favorite, chocolate soufflé. Rachel hesitated, her hand clutching her purse. Another time. Stay. Mark's voice was too eager, too insistent. He caught himself and added, we hardly see you anymore. I watched the silent communication pass between them, the slight shake of Rachel's head, the tightening around Mark's eyes. How long had I been blind to this dance? Rachel. My father's voice cut through the tension. Before you go, I wanted to ask about that charity gala you're organizing. The one next month. Oh, yes. Rachel sank back into her chair, trapped by courtesy. We're still finalizing the details. Excellent. Jane will be handling the firm's donation this year. Perhaps you two should coordinate. I smiled at Rachel, all teeth. We should definitely meet up to discuss it. Just the two of us. The color drained from her face. That would be nice. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. But not before I caught the flash of an incoming message notification. Important client? I asked innocently. Just spam, he muttered. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced small talk and careful avoidance. When Rachel finally left, Mark insisted on walking her to her car. I watched from the window as they stood too close, speaking in urgent whispers. You see it too, don't you? My father's voice startled me. I turned to find him studying me with those shrewd eyes that had built an empire. See what? He took a slow sip of his Bordeaux. I didn't build this family's success by being blind to betrayal, Jane. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What would you do? His smile was cold. I'd remember that revenge, like fine wine, is best served at precisely the right temperature. Too hot, and you lose the subtleties. Too cold, and you miss the full impact. I heard Mark's footsteps approaching. My father squeezed my shoulder and whispered, choose your moment carefully, daughter. But when you strike, make it count. That night, I lay awake listening to Mark's steady breathing beside me, planning my next move. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start following him. Sometimes the only way to expose a snake is to track it to its nest. The Monarch Bar was exactly the kind of place Rachel would choose, all crystal chandeliers and velvet booths, trying too hard to be sophisticated. From my position at the corner table, partially hidden behind a massive floral arrangement, I had a perfect view of the entrance. Mark had told me he was working late. Again. But his car wasn't in the office parking lot when I drove past at 7. Now, watching him walk through those ornate doors at 8:15, I felt my wedding ring grow heavy on my finger. He didn't even look around before sliding into a booth near the back. Waiting. I ordered another club soda and watched the minutes tick by on my phone. At 8:30 exactly, Rachel walked in. She'd changed since the office, traded her usual conservative blazer for a black dress that showed more skin than it covered. The jasmine perfume probably came with it. My fingers tightened around my glass as she slipped into Mark's booth. They didn't kiss. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they leaned close, heads bent together like conspirators. His hand disappeared under the table. Rachel laughed, that throaty laugh she reserved for men she wanted to impress. The waiter appeared at my table. "Another club soda, ma'am?" "No." I stood, dropping cash on the table. "But I'd like you to deliver something to that couple in the corner booth." 5 minutes later, I watched the waiter place a champagne bottle at their table. Mark's face lit up until he read the note I'd attached. "Congratulations on the promotion. Love, Jane." The color drained from both their faces. Rachel knocked over her wine glass, reaching for her purse. Mark's head whipped around, scanning the bar. But I was already walking toward them, calm as still water. "Don't get up," I said, sliding into their booth. "You both look so comfortable." "Jane," Rachel started. "Shut up." My voice was ice. "I've known you since we were 15, Rachel. 15 years of secrets and sleepovers and supporting each other through every crisis. And this is how you repay that loyalty." Mark tried to take my hand. "This isn't what you think." I yanked away. "Really? Because I think my husband and my best friend have been fucking behind my back. Am I wrong?" The silence was answer enough. "How long?" Rachel stared at her spilled wine, watching it seep into the white tablecloth. 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of family dinners and girls' nights and casual texts. Of Rachel asking about my marriage, pretending to care while she destroyed it. "I never meant," Rachel's voice cracked. "To what? Get caught?" I leaned forward. "Or did you never mean to want everything I have? My husband, my family's connections, my life?" "That's not fair," she whispered. "Fair?" I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make nearby diners turn. "Was it fair when you helped me pick out anniversary gifts for Mark? When you held my hand at my mother's funeral? When you stood beside me at my wedding as my maid of honor?" Mark touched my shoulder. "Jane, please. People are staring. Let them." I shrugged off his hand. "Let them see exactly who you both are." Rachel was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Keep your sorry." I stood, smoothing my dress. "But know this, I'm not done. Not even close. You both seem to have forgotten who I am, who my family is. That was your first mistake. What are you going to do?" Mark's voice held an edge of panic. I smiled, the same smile my father used before destroying his competitors. "Nothing yet. But I want you both to remember this feeling, this moment of knowing I could ruin you, and not knowing when it's coming. Consider it foreplay." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Rachel. That perfume you're wearing. It's cheap. Like everything else about you." Walking out of the Monarch bar, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Let them sweat, let them wonder what I'd do next. My father was right, revenge, like fine wine, needs time to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. "Please, can we talk?" I deleted it without responding. The time for talking was over. Now it was time to plan. The burner phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering onto Mark's pristine car floor mats. I'd found it tucked behind the spare tire while pretending to look for a missing earring, an old trick my father taught me about searching competitors' offices. Always have a plausible excuse. 217 messages. Dozens of photos. 6 months of digital betrayal, wrapped in a cheap black plastic case. Mrs. Mitchell. Garcia, our security guard, tapped on the garage window. "Everything all right? The cameras showed you'd been down here a while." I pocketed the phone. "Just being thorough about that earring. It was my grandmother's." His expression softened. Want me to help look? No need. I locked Mark's car. Some things are meant to stay lost. Upstairs in my office, I closed the blinds and scrolled through the messages. Each one felt like swallowing broken glass. Rachel, missing you already. Last night was incredible. Mark, can't stop thinking about that thing you do with your tongue. Rachel, Jane suspects nothing. She actually asked me to help plan your anniversary party. Mark, you're so much more exciting than her. She's become boring. Predictable. My finger hovered over the call button to my father's private investigator. One call, and I could have a full dossier on their every movement. But that would mean admitting this betrayal to my father, watching pity replace pride in his eyes. My office phone buzzed. Mrs. Mitchell. Your sister-in-law is here. Lori stood in my doorway, Eli balanced on her hip. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I need to tell you something. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, keeping the burner phone hidden in my lap. What's wrong? I saw them. She bounced Eli nervously. Mark and Rachel. At the lake house last weekend. The lake house. My sanctuary. The place where Mark and I had spent our honeymoon. When Mark said he was helping me with Eli's custody paperwork. Lori's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Jane. I should have told you sooner. How long have you known? 3 months. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mark said he'd help with my legal fees if I kept quiet. I needed the money, but I can't. I can't sleep anymore. I stood, walking to the window. Below, downtown traffic crawled through the afternoon heat. Does anyone else know? Just Rachel's brother. He caught them at some hotel last month. Of course. The web of lies and silence spreads like cancer, corrupting everything it touches. What are you going to do? Lori asked. I turned back to her, decision crystallizing. Nothing. Yet. But. Take Eli home, Lori. Forget we had this conversation. After she left, I pulled up the company's financial records. Mark's recent promotion had given him access to significant accounts. If I knew my husband, and I did, better than he thought, he'd have gotten sloppy with the money too. 3 hours later, I had what I needed. Expensive hotel charges masked as business meetings. Cash withdrawals from company accounts. Rachel's charity foundation suddenly receiving generous anonymous donations. My father's voice came from the doorway. Found what you were looking for. I didn't bother hiding the screens. How long have you known? About the affair or the embezzlement? Both. He settled into Lori's vacated chair. Long enough to know you'd figure it out yourself. The question is, what's your next move? I held up the burner phone. I have evidence of the affair. And now proof he's stealing from the company. Be careful, Jane. Revenge is like a double-edged sword. I learned from the best. I met his gaze. Remember Carlton Industries? A smile tugged at his lips. Carlton Industries, our biggest competitor until my father discovered their CEO's gambling addiction. He didn't just destroy the company, he made sure everyone knew exactly why it fell. The board meets next week, I said. Mark's presenting the quarterly reports. My father nodded slowly. Perfect timing for some discrepancies to come to light. I slipped the burner phone back into my pocket. I think it's time Rachel and Mark learned what happens when you betray a Mitchell. The sword was drawn. Now I just had to decide where to strike first. My mother's antique serving dishes gleamed under the dining room lights as I arranged them perfectly on the table. The annual Mitchell family dinner, traditionally a celebration of the firm's success, would serve a different purpose this year. The flowers look lovely, Mark said from the doorway, adjusting his tie. You've outdone yourself. I centered a crystal vase filled with white lilies, Rachel's favorite. I wanted everything to be memorable. The doorbell rang. Mark moved to answer it, but I stopped him. Let me. You should check the wine cellar, make sure the Bordeaux is breathing properly. Rachel stood on the doorstep, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost 3 months' salary. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Jane, I've been trying to reach you. Come in. I stepped aside. Everyone's looking forward to your presentation about the charity foundation. She paled slightly. Presentation? Didn't Mark tell you? The board wants to hear about where their donations are going. The next hour was a symphony of arrivals, board members, their spouses, my father with his trademark scrutinizing gaze. Lori came without Eli, her eyes darting nervously between Mark and me. During cocktails, I watched Rachel touch Mark's arm 3 times. He checked his phone 12 times. Both jumped when my father clinked his glass for attention. Before dinner, he announced, I'd like to address some business matters. Mark, you have the quarterly reports. Mark straightened his jacket. Of course, sir. Though perhaps we could wait until. Actually, I interrupted, I have something to share first. I retrieved a folder from my study. Some interesting discrepancies came to light during my review. Rachel's wine glass trembled slightly. Mark's confident smile cracked at the edges. It seems, I continued, that several large donations to a certain charity foundation came directly from company accounts. Unauthorized transfers, cleverly disguised as business expenses. The room grew silent. My father's expression hardened as I laid out photocopied bank statements and hotel receipts. Jane, Mark started, there's a perfectly reasonable. I'm not finished. I pulled out the burner phone. I also found this. The messages are enlightening. Especially the ones about the lake house. Rachel stood abruptly. I should go. Sit down. My father's voice could have frozen hell. Both of you will hear this out. I played selected messages through the room's speakers. Mark and Rachel's intimate exchanges echoed off the walls, each word a nail in their coffins. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Someone's wife gasped. 6 months, I said, my voice steady. 6 months of betrayal, theft, and lies. From my husband and my best friend. Please, Rachel whispered, mascara tracking down her cheeks. We never meant to get caught. To destroy everything my family built. I turned to the board members. The foundation is a shell. They've been embezzling your donations, using company money to fund their affair. Mark lunged for the folder. You can't prove. My father's hand clamped on his shoulder. Actually, she can. The SEC will be very interested in these records. You're bluffing, Mark snarled. You wouldn't risk the scandal. I smiled, my father's smile, the one that preceded destruction. Try me. The Mitchell name will survive. Will yours? Rachel broke first, crumpling into her chair. I'll resign. Pay everything back. Just please. Too late. I placed a final document on the table. The police have already been notified about the financial fraud. And Mark? I've filed for divorce. Your things are packed in the garage. The room erupted in chaos. Board members demanded explanations. Mark shouted about betrayal, rich, coming from him. Rachel fled, heels clicking on marble. Through it all, I remained standing, watching my carefully orchestrated destruction unfold. My father caught my eye across the room, nodding slightly. Proud. Later, after everyone left, I sat alone at the empty table. The lilies were wilting, their sweet scent turning sour. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. I never wanted your life. I just wanted to matter like you do. I deleted it without responding. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. And some betrayals deserve no mercy. Tomorrow, the real damage would begin. Tonight, I would sleep soundly, knowing I'd chosen my moment perfectly. The morning after the dinner party, I walked into my office to find Mark waiting. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit wrinkled. The Wall Street Journal lay open on my desk, our company's scandal already making headlines. "You've destroyed everything," he said quietly. Was revenge worth it? I moved to my chair, noting how he flinched when I passed. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. The SEC is freezing my accounts. Rachel's foundation is being investigated. Her brother lost his job because of the connection. He leaned forward. You didn't just burn us, you torched everyone around us. Collateral damage. The words tasted bitter. Like what you did to Lori and Eli. His laugh was hollow. At least I helped them. What have you done except prove you're exactly like your father? Cold. Calculating. Willing to sacrifice anyone for the sake of winning. The truth in his words stung more than I expected. My phone buzzed, another message from Rachel's mother, begging me to drop the charges. I'd gotten 12 similar ones since dawn. You want to talk about sacrifice? I pulled up the security footage from the lake house. Let's discuss what you did in my mother's bed. The one she died in. Color drained from his face. How did you? I had cameras installed everywhere after she passed. To preserve memories, I told myself. I played the clip, muting the sound. Imagine my surprise when I found these. He lunged across the desk, knocking over my coffee. You vindictive bitch. Security burst in, restraining him. My father appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. Get him out. And make sure he doesn't leave town, the police have more questions. After they dragged Mark away, my father studied me. You look terrible. Thanks. The board's calling an emergency meeting. There's concern about how this affects the firm's reputation. I straightened papers Mark had scattered. We'll weather it. Jane. His tone made me look up. Some board members think we should distance ourselves from the scandal. They're suggesting you take a leave of absence. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You agreed. I abstained from the vote. But they're right, we need to protect the firm. The firm I just protected by exposing fraud. The firm you exposed to public scrutiny. He sighed. Sometimes winning the battle costs you the war. My phone buzzed again. Lori, they're taking Eli. Mark's charges mean I lose custody to his father. Please help. The walls seemed to close in. Everything I'd done to protect my family, my legacy, was unraveling. I'd wanted justice, but at what cost? Rachel's brother, unemployed. Eli, losing his mother. The firm I'd given everything to, now turning its back. Even my father's carefully neutral expression felt like abandonment. Take the leave, he said softly. Let things cool down. We'll weather this, like we always do. We? I stood, suddenly unable to breathe. There is no we. There never was. It was always about the firm, wasn't it? About appearances. Jane. Get out. When he didn't move, I hurled my coffee mug at the wall. Get out. Alone in my office, I watched headlines scroll across my screen. The scandal was spreading, consuming everything in its path. My phone kept buzzing, pleas, threats, accusations. Each message a reminder of lives I'd helped destroy. Rachel's last text flashed. I hope it was worth it. We all lost everything, but you lost yourself. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window, perfectly styled hair, designer suit, Mitchell family steel in my spine. The image blurred as tears finally came. I'd won. I'd destroyed them all. But standing in my empty office, watching my carefully constructed world crumble, I realized Rachel was right. In becoming my father's daughter, in choosing revenge over mercy, I'd lost something essential. Something that no amount of justice could restore. The sun set over the city skyline, casting long shadows across my empire of ashes. Tomorrow, I'd have to face the consequences. Tonight, I let myself mourn everything I'd sacrificed at the altar of revenge. The lake house looked smaller in the rain. Rachel sat on the covered porch, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and an old sweater. She didn't look surprised to see me. I wondered when you'd come, she said. I held up the envelope that had arrived that morning. Your letter was unexpected. Did you read it? Every word. I settled into the chair opposite her, watching raindrops hit the lake. 15 pages of explanation. Or justification, depending on how you look at it. She wrapped her arms around herself. Mark's being sentenced tomorrow. 5 years, probably less with good behavior. The SEC was thorough. And me? The foundation's assets are frozen. But since you're cooperating. I let the sentence hang. Lightning flashed across the water. Rachel flinched. I used to envy how you never showed fear. Even in high school, you were always so certain. Appearances. I pulled out my phone, showing her the security footage. The lake house cameras caught everything. Including the night you both came here after my mother's funeral. Her face crumpled. Jane. I watched it all. Every visit. Every time you played house in my family's sanctuary. My voice remained steady. You wore my mother's robe. The blue silk one she loved. I didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing. Both of you. I stood, walking to the railing. What I can't figure out is why. Was it just about hurting me? Or did you really think you could replace me? I wanted to be you. The words exploded from her. Perfect Jane Mitchell, with her perfect life and perfect family. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Being the friend who's never quite good enough. So you fucked my husband. Stole from my family. That was your solution. Mark understood. He felt it too, never measuring up to the Mitchell standard. She laughed bitterly. We were both tired of being supporting characters in the Jane Mitchell show. Supporting characters. I turned slowly. You were my best friend. My sister in everything but blood. I trusted you with everything. Everything except the truth. About who you really are, what your family really does. She stood, anger finally breaking through her guilt. Your father destroyed my brother's career years ago. Did you know that? Of course not. The Mitchells don't discuss their casualties. The revelation hit like ice water. What? Ask your father about Carlton Industries. About why my brother really left finance. Her hands shook. Mark and I. We thought we could beat you at your own game. Take something from the Mitchells for once. Understanding dawned, bitter and cold. So this wasn't just an affair. It was revenge. Does it matter anymore? We all lost. She pulled out a familiar key, my mother's spare. Here. I won't need it where I'm going. Where's that? Away. Far from here. From you. She stepped past me, pausing at the stairs. You won, Jane. Just like a Mitchell always does. I hope it fills whatever emptiness drives you. I caught her arm. Rachel. What? I loved you. Despite everything, you were family. That's the problem with Mitchells. She gently pulled away. Your love comes with too high a price. I watched her walk to her car, disappearing into the rain. The key felt heavy in my hand, my mother's key, witness to so many betrayals. Inside, the lake house still held echoes of the past. Photos on the walls, memories of happier times. I traced my mother's face behind the glass. My phone buzzed, my father. I let it ring. Some victories feel like defeats. Some revenge leaves wounds that never heal. Standing in my mother's house, surrounded by ghosts of trust and friendship, I finally understood the true cost of being a Mitchell. Tomorrow, Mark would face justice. Rachel would disappear. The firm would survive, as it always did. But something had shifted, something fundamental and irreversible. I placed my mother's key on the mantel, next to her photo. Then I walked out, leaving the past locked behind me. It was time to write my own story, one where victory didn't require destroying everything I loved. The rain had stopped. Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, full of possibilities and second chances. I drove toward it, finally ready to find out who Jane Mitchell could be without the weight of revenge. The divorce papers lay unsigned on my desk, Mark's empty signature line a final act of defiance. Through my office window, I watched movers empty his corner office, another Mitchell legacy stripped bare. My father's reflection appeared in the glass. The board voted. You're officially CEO. And you're officially retired. I didn't turn around. Was that always the plan? Let me destroy my marriage, my friendships, just to prove I could be ruthless enough for the position. You proved you're a Mitchell. He moved beside me. Though perhaps a different kind than I expected. On my desk, a newspaper showed Rachel's foundation being dissolved, its remaining assets distributed to legitimate charities. Another showed Mark entering prison. Victory, by any measure. I found the Carlton Industries files, I said. Rachel's brother wasn't the only casualty of our family's success, was he? My father's silence was answer enough. I'm restructuring the firm. I finally faced him. Starting with full audits of all our past acquisitions. Restitution where necessary. That could cost millions. Then it costs millions. He studied me with new eyes. You're not just changing the firm. You're changing what it means to be a Mitchell. Someone has to. My phone buzzed, Lori. She'd accepted my offer to head our new charitable foundation, using her legal background to help families like her own. Eli would stay with her, thanks to some carefully applied Mitchell influence in the right courts. The board won't like these changes, my father warned. The board works for me now. I handed him a file. Starting with this, we're helping Rachel's brother restart his investment firm. Privately, anonymously. Conscience doesn't build empires. No, but it might help me sleep at night. I picked up my pen, signing the divorce papers with swift strokes. Besides, isn't that what you taught me? The long game matters more than quick victories. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Your mother would be proud. She always said you'd find your own way. She also said revenge was a poison. I touched the photo on my desk, Mom at the lake house, laughing. I just didn't understand what she meant until now. My father moved to leave, then paused. The lake house. What will you do with it? Sell it. Use the money to start a scholarship fund in Mom's name. I met his eyes. Some places should stay in the past. After he left, I opened my drawer, pulling out Rachel's letter. Her last words still haunted me. We were both prisoners of the Mitchell name, just in different ways. I hope you find freedom from it, Jane. I finally have. The city stretched before me, its skyline dotted with buildings bearing our name. But for the first time, I saw beyond the empire, beyond the legacy of power and revenge that had shaped us all. My assistant knocked. Your next appointment is here. The Carlton Industries Survivors Fund. Send them in. I slipped Rachel's letter into my shredder, watching the past dissolve into confetti. The Mitchell name would continue. The firm would prosper. But perhaps success didn't have to mean destruction. Perhaps power could build instead of break. I touched my mother's photo one last time, then turned to face my visitors. Their stories needed hearing. Their wounds needed healing. And I needed to prove that a Mitchell could be more than just a name to fear. Outside, the sun broke through clouds, casting long shadows across the city. Somewhere, Rachel was starting over. Mark was facing his consequences. And I was finally writing my own definition of victory. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I'd learned the true price of revenge, and chosen a different path. Now it was time to see where it led. Welcome, I said to my visitors. Let's talk about making things right.
I found the note wedged between Ella's math homework and her favorite unicorn folder. Just a simple piece of paper, really, but the words on it made my hands shake so hard I had to sit down on the kitchen floor. My name is Daisy, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I was doing a decent job at this whole motherhood thing. But there it was, in my mother-in-law's perfect cursive, documentation of maternal negligence, instance number 7. The list that followed was methodical, dated, time-stamped. Child arrived at school without proper winter coat, temperature 45 degrees Fahrenheit. That was the day Ella insisted on wearing her favorite sweater. The one with the rainbow sequins. Inappropriate sugar content in packed lunch. The day I let her have 2 cookies instead of 1. Consistently late pickup from piano lessons demonstrates inability to maintain schedule. What are you doing down there? Ryan's voice made me jump. My husband stood in the doorway, his tie loosened after a long day at the office, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Your mother. My voice came out raw. Your mother is building a case against me. What? Let me see that. He reached for the paper, but I clutched it to my chest. She wants to take Ella away from me. The words tasted like acid. Your mother is documenting every little thing I do wrong, Ryan. Every single mistake. He ran a hand through his hair, that nervous gesture I used to find endearing. Come on, Daisy. You're overreacting. Mother's just particular about things. Particular? I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. She's gathering evidence. These aren't just notes, they're ammunition. Where's Ella? He asked, changing the subject. Upstairs, doing homework. Where she's been for the last hour while I've been discovering that your mother is plotting to prove I'm an unfit mother. Ryan stepped closer, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. Don't. I shoved the paper at his chest. Read it yourself. Then tell me I'm overreacting. His eyes scanned the page, and I watched his face change. Confusion, disbelief, then something darker. This doesn't mean 7 instances, Ryan. She's numbered them. There are 6 more notes like this somewhere. Maybe in her desk, maybe with her lawyer. But they exist. The sound of small feet on the stairs made us both freeze. Ella appeared in the doorway, her dark curls escaping from her braids that Margaret had criticized as too messy last week. Mommy? Can I have a snack? I forced a smile. Of course, baby. How about some apple slices? With peanut butter? You bet. I moved to the fridge, hyper-aware now of every action. Would Margaret document this too? Instance number 8, insufficient protein portion in afternoon snack? Ryan crumpled the paper in his fist. I'll talk to her. No. I carefully arranged apple slices on Ella's favorite plate, the blue one with clouds. Talking isn't enough anymore. Your mother has made her move. Now I'm making mine. What does that mean? I looked at our daughter, happily dipping her apple in peanut butter, completely unaware of the war brewing around her. Then I met Ryan's worried gaze. It means I'm done playing nice. If Margaret wants to document my failures as a mother, maybe it's time I start keeping some records of my own. About her. Daisy. Did you know she picks Ella up from piano lessons sometimes without telling me? Just shows up early and takes her for ice cream. Ella mentioned it last week. Funny how that didn't make it onto her list of instances. Ryan's face paled. She wouldn't. She would. She is. I wiped peanut butter from Ella's chin. And she's about to learn that she's not the only one who knows how to play this game. The Sunday dinner tradition at Margaret's house felt like walking into a beautifully decorated minefield. I watched Ella pick at her roast beef, her shoulders tight, nothing like her usual bouncy self. 3 weeks had passed since I found that note, and my daughter's transformation around her grandmother was becoming impossible to ignore. Ella, darling, sit up straight, Margaret said, reaching across to adjust my daughter's posture. A proper young lady never slouches. I gripped my fork tighter. She's 6, Margaret. Not attending finishing school. Which is precisely why these formative years are so crucial. Margaret's smile could freeze hell. Speaking of education, I ran into Caroline Mitchell at the club yesterday. Her granddaughter goes to Whitmore Academy. They have an excellent elementary program. Ryan's head snapped up. Mother, we've discussed this. Ella's happy at her current school. Of course she is. But happiness isn't everything. Margaret dabbed her lips with her napkin. I hear the waiting list for next year is quite lengthy. Though I'm sure if someone with the right connections made a call. May I be excused? Ella's voice was barely a whisper. I nodded, watching her slide off her chair and practically run from the dining room. The click of her Mary Janes on the hardwood felt like tiny hammers in my chest. She seems anxious lately, Margaret observed, her voice dripping with false concern. Have you considered taking her to see someone? I know an excellent child psychologist. The only thing making her anxious is, I started, but Ryan's hand on my knee stopped me. Actually, Mother, we should discuss something else. Ryan cleared his throat. Daisy mentioned you've been picking Ella up from piano without telling us. Margaret's face didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Oh. I thought it was understood that I might occasionally treat my granddaughter. Unless that's somehow inappropriate now? It's inappropriate when you don't tell us, I said. Just like it's inappropriate to slip notes into her backpack. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Don't you? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photo I'd taken of her note. Instance number 7? How many more are there, Margaret? Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Mother, we need to establish some boundaries. Boundaries? Margaret's laugh was sharp. That's rich, coming from the woman who married into this family with nothing but a high school diploma and a waitressing job. Tell me, Daisy, how is that going? Still picking up extra shifts at that charming little diner? I work hard to provide for my family. Of course you do, dear. And it's admirable, really. But is it enough? She turned to Ryan. Darling, you must think of Ella's future. The opportunities she deserves. The connections she needs. Stop it. Ryan's voice was quiet but firm. You're crossing a line. Am I? Or am I simply saying what everyone else is thinking? Margaret stood, smoothing her silk blouse. I should check on Ella. She seemed upset. Don't you dare. I blocked her path. You don't get to use my daughter's feelings as a weapon. I heard the most fascinating thing at Bridge Club last week, Margaret continued as if I hadn't spoken. About your grandmother's difficulties before she took you in. Addiction runs in families, they say. My blood ran cold. How had she? That's enough. Ryan stood so abruptly, his chair scraped against the floor. We're leaving. Now. In the car, Ella fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the tension. Ryan drove in silence until we were halfway home. I had no idea she would. Save it. I stared out the window. Your mother just threatened to dig up my family's past to use against me. To take our daughter away. And you sat there letting her until the very end. What do you want me to do? I turned to look at him, really look at him. I want you to choose Ryan. Because this isn't just about me anymore. Look at what she's doing to Ella. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, and I knew. He wasn't ready to choose. Not yet. Fine. I pulled out my phone and texted Sam, need your help. Time to start digging. Sam's office at the local newspaper wasn't much bigger than a closet, but it had everything we needed, mainly access to public records and a friend crazy enough to help me dig through Margaret's past. You're not going to like this, Sam said, spinning her monitor toward me. Your mother-in-law has been meeting with Jerome Patterson. My stomach dropped. Everyone in town knew Patterson specialized in custody battles, and he never lost. How did you find this? Court registry. She filed preliminary paperwork last Tuesday. Sam's fingers flew across the keyboard. They're building a case based on financial stability and educational opportunities. Classic elite versus working class strategy. I leaned against her desk, steadying myself. She's really doing it. She's trying to take my daughter. There's more. Sam hesitated. Margaret's been talking to your old supervisor at the Grove Diner. The one who fired you 3 years ago. The memory hit like a slap, Margaret showing up during my shift, making impossible demands, complaining to management until they let me go. I'd always suspected she'd orchestrated it, but could never prove it. She's systematically destroying every part of my life. My voice sounded hollow even to me. First my job, now my daughter. Not if we can help it. Sam pulled up another window. Look at this. 25 years ago, Margaret Caldwell Hayes wasn't exactly the society queen she pretends to be. The newspaper article was yellowed with age, but the headline was clear, local woman claims inheritance through contested marriage. Below it, a younger Margaret stood outside a courthouse, her face tight with determination. Holy shit, I whispered. She married into the Hayes family. Just like she accuses me of doing. And not everyone was happy about it. There were allegations that she manipulated Ryan's father when he was vulnerable, right after his first wife died. Sam's eyes gleamed. The case was settled quietly, but the records still exist. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan, mother's hosting dinner party Saturday. Wants us there. Important clients attending. Perfect timing, Sam said, reading over my shoulder. Public event, lots of witnesses. No. I straightened up. Too risky. If I confront her there. Who said anything about confronting? Sam grinned. Sometimes the best revenge is just knowing when to drop the right information into the right ears. I stared at the article, at young Margaret's familiar calculating expression. I need copies of everything. Already on it. But Daisy. Sam caught my arm. Be careful. People like Margaret, they're most dangerous when they're cornered. I know. I gathered the papers she'd printed. But she started this war. I'm just making sure I don't fight it alone. Leaving Sam's office, I nearly collided with someone in the hallway. My papers scattered across the floor, and as I bent to gather them, I froze. There, in perfectly polished shoes, stood Margaret. What an unexpected pleasure, she said, her voice dripping honey. Doing some research? I stood slowly, clutching the papers to my chest. "What are you doing here, Margaret?" "Oh, just dropping off an announcement for the hospital fundraiser." Her eyes flickered to the papers in my hands. "You know, dear, desperation isn't attractive. It rather proves my point about your suitability." "Funny you should mention suitability." I met her gaze steadily. "I've been learning quite a bit about that lately. About how people can reinvent themselves, change their circumstances. You'd know all about that, wouldn't you?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. Fear flickered across her face before she recovered. "Be very careful, Daisy." Her voice was soft, dangerous. "You're playing a game you don't understand." "No, Margaret. For the first time, I understand perfectly." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You're not the only one who knows how to fight for what's yours." She reached out, straightening my collar with cold fingers. "Saturday night, then? Ryan mentioned you might not attend. But I insist. Family should stick together, don't you think?" I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the linoleum like a countdown. My phone buzzed again, another text from Ryan, "Please come Saturday. Need you there." I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." The game was changing. Margaret had her lawyers and her social connections. But I had something better, the truth about her past, and nothing left to lose. The folder sat on our kitchen table like a loaded gun. Inside were the documents Sam had helped me gather, proof that Margaret's perfect life was built on the same kind of social climbing she accused me of. I'd spent 3 hours trying to decide whether to show them to Ryan. The front door opened, and I heard Ella's voice chattering about her day at school. Ryan's responses were distracted, tense. They'd been to another piano lesson, one Margaret had insisted on attending. "Mommy." Ella ran in for a hug, but stopped short when she saw my face. "Are you okay?" "Just tired, baby." I forced a smile. "Why don't you go start your homework?" "I need to talk to Daddy." Once she was upstairs, Ryan loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. Not a good sign. Mother's lawyer was at the lesson today. The words hit like ice water. "What?" "Patterson. He was just dropping by to discuss the upcoming fundraiser." Ryan's laugh was bitter. "Except he spent 20 minutes asking Ella about her school, her friends, her routine." My hand crept toward the folder. "And you let him?" What was I supposed to do? "'Cause a scene in front of our daughter?" He downed his scotch. "Mother says he's helping with her estate planning. Making sure Ella's future is secure." Estate planning. The words tasted like ash. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Daisy. Your mother is building a custody case against me, and you're standing there making excuses for her." I pushed the folder toward him. "Do you want to know what else she's been planning?" He stared at the folder but didn't touch it. "I don't want to know." "You need to know." My voice cracked. "Because right now, you're choosing ignorance over protecting your family." "I am protecting my family." His shout startled us both. Upstairs, Ella's music started playing, her way of drowning out our arguments. "By letting your mother's lawyer interrogate our daughter? By watching her systematically destroy my reputation?" I stood up, my legs shaking. "Do you know what she did to me at the Grove? Why I really lost that job? That was years ago. It was practice." I opened the folder, spreading out the old newspaper clippings. "Just like what she did to your father's first wife's family. Did you know about that? About how she manipulated the inheritance?" Ryan's face went pale. "Where did you get these?" "The same place your mother's getting her ammunition, public records." I watched him scan the headlines. "She's done this before, Ryan. She finds people's weaknesses and exploits them. And now she's doing it to me." "Stop." He gathered the papers roughly, shoving them back in the folder. "Just stop. This isn't helping." "Then what would help?" What do I have to do to make you see what's happening? The silence stretched between us, filled only by the muffled sound of Ella's piano practice above. Saturday's dinner party, he finally said. Mother's invited Patterson and half the hospital board. If you come, if you play nice, maybe we can. Play nice? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. While she parades me around like evidence. Look everyone, here's my son's unfortunate choice. See how unsuitable she is. Please. He reached for my hand. For Ella's sake. For our family. I pulled away, remembering Margaret's cold fingers straightening my collar. The threat in her voice. You want me to go to that party? Fine. I'll go. I picked up the folder. But not to play nice. What does that mean? It means I'm done being the victim in your mother's game. I headed for the stairs, then turned back. You should decide whose side you're really on, Ryan. Because Saturday night, everything changes. His voice stopped me. Are you giving me an ultimatum? No. I met his eyes. I'm giving you a warning. The same courtesy your mother never gave me. Upstairs, Ella's music had stopped. In the silence, I could hear her crying softly. Another casualty in Margaret's war. I had 2 days until the dinner party. 2 days to decide if saving my family meant being willing to destroy it first. Margaret's dinner party hummed with wealth and whispers. I adjusted my borrowed cocktail dress, Sam's idea of armor for battle, and watched the lawyer, Patterson, work the room. He'd been watching me all evening, measuring every move like I was evidence being catalogued. More wine, dear. Margaret appeared at my elbow, perfect in pearls and silk. You seem tense. I'm fine. I gripped my glass tighter. Though I noticed you seated me next to the social services director. Subtle. Mrs. Chen? Pure coincidence. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though she did mention some fascinating statistics about children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Across the room, Ryan was deep in conversation with Patterson. My husband's shoulders were tight, his gestures controlled. He hadn't spoken to me since we arrived. Shall we step into the study? Margaret's voice dropped. There's something we should discuss privately. The study was exactly as I remembered, dark wood, leather chairs, photographs of Ryan throughout the years. But now I noticed something else, a legal document on the desk, Patterson's business card placed deliberately beside it. You're planning to file next week. It wasn't a question. It doesn't have to be this way. Margaret closed the door. I'm prepared to be generous. Full college fund for Ella, private school tuition, a comfortable monthly allowance for you. In exchange for what? A clean break. No messy custody battle. You'll have supervised visitation, of course, but... You really think you can buy my daughter? The words came out sharp enough to cut. I think I can provide what you can't. She picked up the document. Stability. Opportunities. A legacy. Like the legacy you stole from your husband's first wife? Margaret's hand trembled slightly. I see you've been digging. Deep enough to find the truth about how you really joined the Hayes family. I stepped closer. Does Ryan know his father was still grieving when you swooped in? That his first wife's family contested the will? Ancient history. Really? Because I have copies of everything. The court records, the newspaper articles, the original inheritance documents. I watched her face pale. What would your society friends think if they knew? You wouldn't dare. Try me. My voice was steady despite my racing heart. I learned from the best, after all. You taught me exactly how to destroy someone's reputation. The study door opened. Ryan stood there, Patterson beside him. Mother? Daisy? What's going on? Margaret recovered first. Your wife was just threatening to spread vicious lies about our family. Not lies. I met Ryan's eyes. Ask her about the Harrison estate. About how your father's first wife died. About the real reason the inheritance was contested. That's enough. Margaret's composure cracked. I won't stand here and let you. Let me what? Tell the truth? I turned to Patterson. You should review your client's history before filing any custody suits. It might save everyone some embarrassment. Custody suits? Ryan's voice was dangerous. Mother, what is he doing here? Margaret stepped between us. Ryan, darling, I can explain. Can you explain this too? I pulled out my phone, showing the photo of her note about my instances of negligence. The room went silent. Through the door, we could hear Ella playing piano for the party guests, a perfect performance, just as Margaret had demanded. I'm trying to protect this family, Margaret whispered. No. Ryan's voice was hollow. You're trying to control it. Like you always have. I can destroy you, Margaret hissed at me. One word about your grandmother's past. Try it. I moved toward the door. But remember, I have nothing left to lose. Can you say the same? I walked out, leaving them there. Ryan's anger, Margaret's fear, Patterson's calculated silence. In the living room, Ella finished her piece to polite applause. Ready to go home, baby? I held out my hand. She nodded, relief flooding her face. As we left, I heard Ryan's voice rise behind us, demanding answers from his mother. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I wasn't the only one fighting it. Ryan didn't come home that night. Or the next. On the third day, Patterson's office sent the custody papers, not to our house, but to my workplace. The lunch rush watched me crumble in my waitress uniform, exactly as Margaret had planned. I quit on the spot. No point giving her more ammunition about my unstable employment history. She's playing dirty now, Sam said, scanning the documents spread across her kitchen table. Using Ryan's name on the custody filing, claiming abandonment since he's staying at the family estate. He's choosing her. The words felt like glass in my throat. After everything, he's actually choosing her. My phone buzzed, another text from Margaret, Ella's piano recital is tomorrow. Don't make a scene by attending. Ryan agrees it's best if you stay away. Sam grabbed my phone before I could respond. She's baiting you. She wants you to react, to prove her point about your instability. What's left to prove? I gestured at the papers. She's won. She has Ryan, the lawyers, the money, the social connections. All I have is the truth. Sam's voice was firm. You have proof of what she did to get her wealth, her status. And using it would destroy Ryan's entire world. I pressed my palms against my eyes. Everything he thought he knew about his family, his father, his childhood, gone. How is that protecting anyone? The doorbell rang. Through Sam's window, I saw Margaret's Mercedes parked outside. I'll get rid of her, Sam started, but I stood up. No. Let her come. Margaret swept in like she owned the place, her designer handbag probably worth more than Sam's monthly rent. Really, Daisy? Hiding at your friend's house? How predictably common. What do you want? She pulled out an envelope. A solution. A generous monthly allowance, supervised visitation with Ella, and your agreement to leave the state. You really think you can buy me off? I think you're running out of options. She glanced meaningfully at the custody papers. Ryan's signature is already on these. He knows what's best for Ella. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The check inside had more zeros than I'd ever seen. Why are you doing this? My voice cracked. You have everything. Your status, your son, your reputation. Why destroy what's left of my family? Because you're a reminder. Margaret's mask slipped, just for a moment. Every time I look at you, I see what I used to be. Desperate. Grasping. Willing to do anything to belong. I'm nothing like you. No? She smiled coldly. Then why did you dig up my past? Why threaten to expose old secrets? Face it, Daisy. You're becoming exactly what you hate. The truth of it hit like a physical blow. In trying to fight Margaret, I'd started using her tactics. Manipulation. Threats. Secret keeping. The recital starts at 7, Margaret continued. Make the right choice. Sign the papers, take the money, let Ella remember you as the mother who loved her enough to let her go. After she left, Sam tried to rally my spirits, but I barely heard her. I was staring at the custody papers, at Ryan's signature beneath Margaret's careful lies. My phone chimed, a video from Ella. She was at the piano, playing the piece for tomorrow's recital. Love you, Mommy, she whispered at the end. Will you be there? I thought of Margaret's words about becoming what you hate. About choices and consequences. About love and letting go. I need your car, I told Sam. For what? The recital. I'm going. Daisy, no. That's what she wants, to provoke you into making a scene. I know. I gathered the custody papers and Margaret's check. But I'm not going to give her what she wants. I'm going to give her something she doesn't expect. Which is? I looked at the proof of Margaret's past, the ammunition I'd gathered so carefully. The truth. All of it. But not the way she thinks. Sam grabbed my arm. You're not making sense. For the first time in weeks, I am. I headed for the door. I know how to end this. But first, I need to make a stop. Where? To see Ryan's father's first wife. The one person who knows exactly what Margaret is capable of and how to stop her. Elizabeth Hayes lived in a modest house across town, nothing like the mansion she'd once shared with Ryan's father. Her eyes were sharp as she studied the documents spread across her kitchen table. So Margaret's at it again. She traced a finger over the custody papers. History repeating itself. You lost your stepdaughter, I said quietly. Claire. She was 12 when Margaret swooped in. Elizabeth's smile was bitter. By the time the dust settled, Margaret had everything, the house, the social standing, and complete custody of Claire. Sound familiar? The recital would start in an hour. My phone buzzed with another message from Ryan. Mother says you're planning something. Don't make this worse. Margaret told everyone I was unstable, Elizabeth continued. That I was a threat to Claire's future. The same lies she's telling about you now. How did she do it? She found my weakness, my past marriage, my financial struggles. But her real weapon? Elizabeth pulled out an old photograph. She knew Richard's secret. The real reason he married her so quickly after my divorce. The photo showed a younger Margaret with Ryan's father. But it was dated 3 months before Elizabeth's divorce was final. They were having an affair. Elizabeth nodded. She threatened to expose him, to ruin his reputation. He chose her over everything, his integrity, his daughter, me. Like Ryan's choosing her over us now. No. Elizabeth stood. Ryan's choosing what he knows. What he thinks is true. She grabbed her car keys. Come on. Where are we going? To your daughter's recital. It's time. Margaret faced all her ghosts at once. The concert hall was packed when we arrived. I spotted Ryan in the front row beside Margaret, who went pale at the sight of Elizabeth. You can't be here, Margaret hissed as we approached. Actually, I can. Elizabeth's voice carried. Claire's performing tonight too. My granddaughter. The one you kept from me for 15 years. Ryan's head snapped up. What is she talking about, Mother? Nothing, darling. Just more attempts to cause trouble. Show him, I said quietly. Show him the photo, Elizabeth. Show him when it was really taken. Margaret lunged for her purse, but Elizabeth was faster. The photograph landed in Ryan's lap. 3 months before the divorce, Elizabeth said clearly. While your father was still married to me. While Margaret was just the family friend, helping everyone through a difficult time. Is this true? Ryan's voice shook. Everything I did for you. Margaret's composure cracked. Your father was weak. He would have lost everything in the scandal. I protected you, protected our family name. By destroying other families? I stepped forward. By taking Claire from Elizabeth? By trying to take Ella from me? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Ryan stood, finally looking at his mother, really looking at her. You're doing to Daisy exactly what you did to Elizabeth. Using the same threats, the same tactics. Ryan, please. Did you forge my signature on those custody papers? Margaret's silence was answer enough. The lights dimmed. On stage, Ella appeared in her recital dress, followed by a teenage girl I didn't recognize. Claire, I realized. Elizabeth's granddaughter. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer began, a special duet. I won't let you destroy another family, Mother. Ryan's voice was quiet but firm. Not this time. He moved to stand beside me, taking my hand as our daughter began to play. Margaret sank into her seat, watching as 15 years of carefully constructed lies crumbled around her. The music swelled, Ella and Claire playing together, 2 pieces of Margaret's fractured legacy creating something unexpectedly beautiful. I'm sorry, Ryan whispered. I should have seen it sooner. I squeezed his hand, watching Margaret's face as she realized what she'd lost. Not just control or power, but the very thing she'd fought so hard to protect, her family's trust. Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about forcing them to face the truth they've spent a lifetime hiding from. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered to our new apartment across town. Margaret's precise handwriting on cream-colored stationery, the Hayes family crest embossed in gold. I almost burned it unopened. You should read it, Ryan said quietly, watching me turn the envelope over and over. She's been trying to reach out for weeks. Through her lawyers? No. Just her. He touched my shoulder. The therapy seems to be helping. From the next room came the sound of Ella practicing piano, no more formal lessons, no more recitals, just playing for the joy of it. Claire had been teaching her new pieces, their weekly sessions becoming a bridge between fractured families. I opened the letter. Dear Daisy, it began. I've written this letter 17 times. Each version felt false, like the carefully constructed image I spent decades maintaining. So let me try something new, the truth. My hands shook as I read on. I saw myself in you, the desperate need to belong, to prove yourself worthy. It terrified me. I destroyed Elizabeth's family to protect my secrets, to secure my place. When you came along, so much like I used to be, I convinced myself I was protecting Ryan, protecting Ella. I was wrong. I was protecting my own lies. Ryan's arm slipped around my waist as I continued reading. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I understand now what real strength looks like. It's not in maintaining perfect appearances or controlling others. It's in fighting for love without becoming the very thing you're fighting against. You managed what I never could, you exposed the truth without losing yourself in the process. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret standing there, alone. No designer handbag, no perfect makeup. Just a grandmother holding a small gift-wrapped package. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. I brought this for Ella, she said, her voice lacking its usual polish. And for you, if you'll accept it. The package contained a photo album. Inside were pictures of Ryan's childhood, but also newspaper clippings of his father's first marriage, Elizabeth and Claire. The truth Margaret had hidden for so long. Our family's real history, she explained. All of it. The good and the bad. Ella should know where she comes from, all sides of it. Why now? Because secrets destroy families. I should know. She stepped back. I'll go. I just wanted to deliver this myself. Wait. The word surprised us both. Ella's inside. Playing Claire's new piece. Hope flickered across Margaret's face, quickly suppressed. I don't expect. 10 minutes, I said firmly. Supervised. And if she seems uncomfortable, you leave immediately. Of course. She hesitated. Thank you, Daisy. As Margaret moved past me, I caught her arm. This doesn't fix everything. I know. But it's a start. Ryan squeezed my hand as we watched Margaret approach the piano, where Ella sat playing. Our daughter's fingers faltered for a moment, then steadied as she launched into a new song, one she'd composed herself. Full of unexpected harmonies and resolved discords. I thought about revenge, about how I'd started this journey wanting to destroy Margaret, just as she tried to destroy me. Somewhere along the way, the victory had become something different, not in breaking her, but in breaking free of the cycle she'd created. The photo album sat heavy in my hands, full of truths both painful and necessary. Like Ella's music, our family's story would continue to evolve, finding harmony in unexpected places. Margaret sat quietly, listening to her granddaughter play, her perfect posture finally showing cracks of genuine emotion. She caught my eye across the room, and in that moment, we both understood, sometimes the greatest revenge is refusing to become what hurt you. I closed the door on the empty hallway, turning back to my family, scarred but healing, changed but whole. The war was over. Now came the harder part, learning to live with peace.